Welcome to the Business Spotlight series. I am Everardo Resendiz, known around here as Coach Ever. I am a certified executive and business coach with Action Coach in Northwest Louisiana. Today, I have Carolyn Dragseth with Dragseth and Associates as my guest, and we're going to be talking about her business, the journey to business ownership, challenges, best practices, and share a peek into what it really is like to build and operate a business. If this is your first time on the channel, please be sure to like and subscribe to get notifications when we drop new conversations just like this one. And so, Carolyn, welcome and thank you for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Will you
I
share with
appreciate
us?
it.
Thank you. Will you share with us a brief overview of your background and tell us a little bit about your business?
Okay. I'm an attorney. I have been in the practice of law for over 25 years. When I first started out the practice of law, I started clerking for a judge, probably like most attorneys do, something kind of boring. And it morphed more into, as I continued my practice, doing things that specifically talked about I would say the transaction that occurs between law and business itself. So my practice is kind of twofold. The first part is the Dragseth law, traditional practice of law. We're just talking about clients and doing things like that. And that's definitely a lot of fun. But as I've progressed through my career, I found that there is another area that is very interesting, which I would call legal compliance. And that was how Dragseth and Associates got started in the government contracting space with both federal and state agencies. And I think that if you think about the practice of law itself, it's been evolving all the time. And I think that we're seeing more and more what kind of people are seeing that law is kind of having to intersect with different areas, and business owners are having more and more questions about regulations. How do I do things online? How do I make sure that I'm complying with all of these different things? So we've kind of seen the practice of law morph a little bit. And my interest in helping entrepreneurs kind of go through that process actually was piqued as I was coming out of the military. I'm an Army JAG veteran. And as I was coming out of the military, one of the things that I was asked to do was to cooperate with an entrepreneurial program in the Tampa Bay area. So shout out to all of my Tampa Bay friends. They actually started working with veterans who were interested in getting into business, and I volunteered there to kind of assist with all of that. It was a great experience for me to kind of see, first of all, how the veteran community is really open to being an entrepreneur, and then also to kind of work with small business and to see how they kind of pounded the pavement to become the companies that they are today. So that's kind of my growth journey as a legal professional.
Well, first of all, thank you for your service. And then, you know, as we walk into this conversation, um, why don't you help me and set up the stage for the viewers and the listeners? What does the current ownership look like? I mean, do you have any partners in these? Are you by yourself? Um, Employees, people working
Uh,
with you, the associates part.
Well, the associates part is still growing. I've had the pleasure of working with lots of different people who have over time come in to do internships with me. And the purpose of that is to kind of give them some experience, especially if they're not specifically a law student or they're not going into the practice of law, gives them some kind of experience with how do I really kind of manage or navigate the entire entrepreneurial space. So I've had those kinds of things. I also have a joint venture with another company here in Louisiana that's called Valseth Enterprises. And that company not only encompasses the government contracting space, but they also have a semiconductor division that falls underneath it. So, very interesting for me because definitely there's never a dull moment in my day.
Right, and this is something that it's taken a lot of hold in Louisiana since we have so much going on in the, let's call it, AI data center space.
Correct, correct. That's
All right,
very
and
true.
so tell me about the role that you have in the business nowadays. I mean, you're obviously an attorney, so you're into all that. As the CEO of Dragseth and Associates, what is life like?
Life is very interesting. I agree with what you said. There's a lot of movement here in the state of Louisiana, and there's an attempt to watch us grow, basically. And I think that one of the biggest kind of drawbacks that we have in the state of Louisiana is something that we're addressing with some of our workforce development programs, where I think that a lot of people want to get into these new businesses, like what you talked about with the AI space and different things like that, and they're really struggling with how do I go through that path. So I find that a lot of my practice relates to kind of intellectual property law as well as information technology law, and specifically with the kinds of things that you have to do to protect yourself and your business as you're doing or transacting in this new kind of space that we have, which is the data space, is what I would call it, where everybody has to do something online. And how do we do that? And then how do we exactly make sure that we're in compliance as well?
Love it. Okay, so let's move on to what makes your business so special. And so, who primarily does your business serve? If I'm in the audience, how do I know that I'm a good fit for you?
My business serves, like I said, a lot of small businesses. My goal is to be cost effective for small business owners to be able to come in and kind of learn a little bit about how do I do things with my business. One of the programs that I'm rolling out right now, and we talked about it a little bit in one of our previous conversations, was the fractional in-house counsel. What I found is that a lot of companies are out there, and instead of going to consult with an attorney, they go and they try to do things on their own, and sometimes that puts them, gets them into a lot of trouble. And so I think that giving affordable kind of solutions where they can have someone that is technically on call for them, but it's not going to cost them thousands of dollars, is a really, really cost effective way to reach out to those small business owners.
Oh, well, that certainly is something that it's special. Um, and so besides these, is there any other reason why people choose to do business with you rather than any other practice of law?
Well, I think that my sweet spot and my specialty is the fact that I have a really deep understanding of both federal and state law. And I think that it's, especially in these times where we're seeing the government's impact on all of the areas of our life, I think that having an attorney who understands not only how do we do things at the federal level, but then also how does that translate to business at the state level is really important. It's also important because it can help people to get into some of those spaces that are difficult for small businesses to get into, which is the example of government contracting. They know that there are bids out there, they know that they can apply for them, but they don't know how to do that. And so part of my expertise is helping people to get into those spaces and to make sure that they get everything kind of in order for what they're planning on doing.
Love it. And so let me ask you this, Carolyn. What is one thing you wish more people knew about Dragseth Law or Dragseth and Associates?
One thing that I wish more people knew is that I try to be a resource for business owners and for my clients, and I like to establish long-term relationships. I don't like it to be one of those things where you come to my office, I do something to help you, and then we never see you again. I have clients that I have spoken to that have stayed with me from my time back when I was volunteering in the Tampa Bay area, who still reach out to me and still hire me to do different things for their companies. So I find that long-term relationships with your clients is really helpful. It helps you to understand what's important to them, and it helps you to understand their mindset and how they're trying to operate or what their goals are. So I think it's really important as an attorney to be able to understand that. And if I were a physician, it would be translation, like I have a good bedside manner. But as an
Right.
attorney, you don't have that. So I would just say that I'm a very relational attorney, and I try to make it so that when we meet, I'm reaching out to my client at their level. And that's very important to me because I want them to leave feeling that they were educated somehow, not just that somebody handed them a bill and sent them out the door. So that's a big differentiator for me. And I like to be there, like I said, long term for my clients.
Love it, love it, love it. And so, well, that leads me to marketing, which is something vital for every business out there and often an area that business people struggle with. And so the question is always, okay, so I want people to know about these things, about my organization, that we're available and all these. I'm always curious about what it is that people do to get their messaging out in the marketplace. What are the different methods they use? Do they use any sort of advertising, or do they budget a certain amount of the revenue into different strategies? How does it look like for you?
Well, I know that you're probably aware that we have a lot of regulations surrounding marketing for attorneys. We just can't go out there like a regular business and just kind of put it out there. We have a lot of regulations. But if I were to have a business client come in and ask me that question where they said, I'm a new business and I want to make sure that everybody understands how they can get in touch with me, I would definitely talk to them a little bit about digital marketing just because I find that the traditional marketing, while still valuable, there's nothing wrong with doing traditional things. I've found that digital marketing is really helpful. I find that more and more people turn to online first and then actual different types of things second. The other thing that I would encourage people to do when we're talking about marketing your business is reaching out and creating those personal connections, which kind of ties back to what I said before. I think that it's very important to meet people where they're at. So I think that it's important to be out there in your community, to be pushing for community based goals so that when you're getting ahead or when your business is growing and progressing, that you're also growing and progressing the companies that surround your business as well. So I think that kind of doing things as a team always to me feels a lot more effective than just trying to kind of hoof it out there on your own. So
Right.
that's very important.
And I mean, when it comes to law practices, there are specialities like you have, right? They're not really out there for everybody to find out unless they absolutely need it. So the online presence, being very targeted, is perhaps the best tool to do it. Um, and yet, nothing beats the ability to shake hands and talk to people about their needs. And so I just think it's probably the way to go. Um, and so, moving on to what the journey has been. Okay, um, please correct me if I'm wrong, but you've been at this for a while, but at some point you decided to do this on your own. And so, what led you there? What was that transition like for you?
Uh, I think being a sole practitioner or being out there on my own was really important for me because it gave me a lot of freedom to reach out to what I would call underrepresented populations. I grew up in the Republic of Panama. My mom is Panamanian and American. And so I realized that there are a lot of opportunities that Hispanic Americans, African Americans, other people are not really given an opportunity to do because not because they don't have the know-how or the gumption, but just because exposure to those kinds of things doesn't generally happen. So a lot of what I do in my government contracting work and space is to reach out to educate those communities because I really think that it's important. And I also do a lot of, and it's kind of funny, but I do a lot of what I would consider kind of pro bono, where if there's something that comes out, for example, that only an HBCU could apply to, then I want to make sure that I get that to the people that I have in my network so that they can get it to the decision makers as well. The same kind of thing. Another perfect example was a couple of weeks ago, we had a meeting. We met a lady who was talking about women owned small businesses and maybe getting together as a group to kind of talk about what works for us and what doesn't work for us. So we're getting a group of ladies together to start something like that here in Baton Rouge. And all of those things come out of community connections. And the goal is really to be there for the people who really need you.
It really goes more to your ability to control your destiny and choose your own battles rather
Correct.
than follow somebody else's. And so, as you look at this journey of yours, so far, what has been the most memorable roadblock or hurdle that you were challenged with, the obstacle that you were forced to overcome?
I think that the biggest challenge that I was forced to overcome was probably understanding that it's important to know what you don't know. And I think that a lot of people are afraid to admit that they don't know something. And I think that if you're open to learning new things, you will find that most people are out there willing and ready to help you. It's also on the flip side of that, the most frustrating thing for me, because if I'm willing to help others and then I hit a door with someone who's trying to help me, it's very difficult for me. But I understand that, sometimes people are open to helping others, sometimes people aren't. It's the whole reason why I've taken on people from all different backgrounds to do kind of like internships. I've worked with students to, make sure that they get exposure to different areas of the law. It's the whole reason behind kind of why I love that entrepreneurial space, because you're in a position that you can actually assist people with things that they have no idea about, and you can kind of bring them into that kind of what I would consider that fold or that grouping where you all help each other to move forward. I think that establishing communities is so important, not only for, the law practice, but for business in general, because I think that if you have 10 people and they're all trying to do the same thing all by themselves, or you have 10 people who are trying to do something all together, the 10 people all together are going to have a greater impact. So I really believe in that teaming approach to things. And I think that obstacle of convincing others to join the team and then stay on the team with the group is probably the biggest obstacle that I've faced.
Love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much for that. And so, when thinking of the business, right? Let's look a little bit farther down the road, right? You come, you start, you find, you get good at what you do, but then you need to look forward. So, what do the next 3 to 5 years look like for you?
The next 3 to 5 years look like for me. I'm actually looking to build my portfolio surrounding things that deal with intellectual property law. So, one of the things that I have volunteered to do for one of our companies is to kind of do a like an informal review of how do you file things in the new copyright portal. And the reasoning behind that is it is intended to be used by the actual individual. It's moving away from having to get an attorney to do it and moving towards the idea that if I'm a creative person and I want to have some kind of protection, they've created a way for you to do it that is very user friendly. So I think that in the next 3 to 5 years, my goal is to continue to educate what I would consider our greatest treasure here in the United States, which is the intellectual mind of the American inventor or the intellectual mind of the American business owner. Because if you look at advancements throughout history, we've made a lot of advancements based on things that people have come up with. So I want to be a part of that creation process. And I also want to be a valuable tool to the people who are doing that.
And so, what is your approach to goal setting? Do you follow a process to you know document them? How often do we do that? Is there a review process in place to make sure that you're following through and actually hitting those marks that you're setting for yourself?
Well, I do, and actually, it's kind of a little bit different than I think most attorneys, but my review process is probably a lot more agile than most attorneys are, where I like to do 30, 60, 90. And I put it visually in front of me with the sticky notes, like old school agile. I just put them up there. And the reason that I like that is I get great satisfaction from moving to done. For me personally. Plus, it reminds you of the ideas that you've had. So, lots of times you'll be in a meeting with someone and they'll come up with a great idea that you want to pursue further or learn more about. And you really haven't thought about, or you didn't have that in your plan, in your long term planning, because you always do, 1 year and 3 year plans. But that 30, 60, 90 keeps things in front of you and it
Sure.
allows you to incorporate it into your long term planning if you need to. A perfect example of that is recently I became interested in space law. I know it sounds crazy, but space law is very interesting, very novel, new type of thing, the door is wide open for attorneys in the sense that we don't have a lot of regulations governing space. If we do, they're conflicting. There's lots of conversations about what kind of law applies in the space. And so I was at a meeting, heard about it, and got a sticky note out and put it on my 30, 60, 90 of I want to find out more about that. Ended up having to put it on my long-term, like 3-year goal, because it is something that's going to take a lot of study to be able to create that portfolio of business. So that's a kind of a long-term goal for me. But I do think that it's something that we're going to hear more and more about as we continue that push towards that new space.
That's right. That's right. And it's very interesting that you do these because ultimately for you to be there, it's going to take a lot of 30 days to get you to where you need to go. And so it's important that that's in place. And again, the encouragement here for everybody business out there is, you can just continue as you go and make decisions and be reactive, or you can have a little bit of proactivity in your life if you lay this out a little bit into the future. So we have certainly covered a lot of information today in this conversation, and we thank so much for these, Carolyn. For those people who are watching, I highly encourage you to save these and come back a few times for an additional watch. There's a lot of great nuggets here. But as we begin to wrap up, I have a few rapid fire questions. Quick top of head answers for each. You game?
I'm game.
All right. So, what is the key to success for you?
Planning. I think planning is very important. If you don't know where you're going, how do you know how you're going to get there?
I wholeheartedly agree. And so, what is your one piece of advice for other business people?
Well, first of all, I got a caveat with it. This is not legal advice. This is just business conversation. And my one piece of advice for all business owners is dream big, allow yourself to dream big, but plan in the short term and the long term. And that's why I have my planning system in place for that. Sometimes you've got to pivot. And if you have to pivot, be ready.
That's right. That's right. The road to those goals isn't a straight line. So, you're going to find yourself sometimes questioning, which is why it's important for you to have it written down so you can review it.
Mhm.
Um, what is one book that you're reading now or you have read that you think everybody should have?
I don't know who the author is, but it's called If You Can Keep It. And it's a book about democracy and talking about how our democracy and how it was set up will run forever as long as you can keep it in the sense that you're an active participant in it. So that's what I've been reading. Just because there's so much, conversation about that out in the world right now. So it was very interesting. It was written I don't remember how many years ago, but it's ways back and it still is an interesting topic to me.
Love it. Thank you so much for that. That's good advice. If you had only one area that you could choose to improve tomorrow, like it'd be done like magic wand style. What will that area be?
Area magic wand style. There's so many that I would want to ask for, but I guess magic fund is to be better at pitch decks and funding because it's important. I
Yes.
think that I've had a lot of business owners talk to me about that and how do I approach that for my company. And I think that I have some experience in that. And so I want to keep honing in on that and making sure that I get better and better because I think that it's very important to be able to articulate what your business does in a very kind of short elevator pitch way. So I think that you need to have pitch decks that explain not only where you've been, but where you're heading and in a way that won't bore anybody who you're trying to present it to.
Get some of that excitement going. I wholeheartedly agree. And so, before we get into the final question of the day, Carolyn, how can other people learn more about you and your company? How can they get in touch with you?
They can get in touch with me by sending me an email, and it's Carolyn at dragsethelaw.com. They can also go to my website or search Dragseth because I'm the only one in Louisiana. So if you search my last name, it'll come up. And then they can also give me a call. And my number is on the website, so you don't have to rush and find a pen. If you just go to dragsethelaw.com, you'll be able to see it right there.
Very good. And so, the final question I have for you today is entrepreneurs like us, we the fuel we have every day comes from inspiration, right? And so that inspiration shifts and moves as we move in the process of development. And so the question for you is, what do you find most inspiring for you today?
Most inspiring for me today is looking at big companies and how they had to go through their pivots in order to become successful. One of the most recent ones that I read that comes to mind was Samsung, that started out as a grocery store, and then they became a something else, and then they became a something else, and then they became something else, and they are the company that we see today. So I just find it very interesting and that's just one of many examples that exist out there. People start out as an entrepreneur thinking, I'm going to go this way. And sometimes through your pivots, you're going to find that where you end up is somewhere completely different. But it's not a failure, it's more a show of your ability to persevere. And I think that perseverance overall is very important for an entrepreneur, because you're going to hear no a lot more times than you're going to hear yes. So you have to kind of be willing to tough through that to get to the yes. And so I would just encourage everybody who's out there starting out, if you had a rough time or you had a rough go of it, don't think that that's the end. You just may need to rethink what you're doing. And I will be transparent. In my companies that I work in, I have had to pivot. So pivoting is not exclusive to one company or another. So don't be afraid to do that. If you find an opportunity that fits in with your wheelhouse, jump on it and don't be afraid. Just keep going.
Love it. Thank you so much, Carolyn, for joining us today and sharing all this with us. Thank you for the audience for being here, and for sharing this information with other people. Reality is that you never know who you can inspire by just making sure that this gets to as many people as you can. And so, again, thank you to everybody, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Carolyn. Have a good day.
Bye.